Comment ça va, YouTube? Danny here with Kitchen Hydroponics. But what's up? Today we are in for the second installment of the greenhouse. Why I do it, how I do it, why I do what I do, and all that stuff. How mine is different than some of the other places. Got me a little cheat sheet. This one's not as long because it's not going to be as in depth. This is going to kind of be fly by the seat of my pants. I have an idea of what I want to do, and we're going to go with it like that. You can see in the back, about a quarter of the way through June, and we still have a lot of tomatoes on the vine. We've picked, I don't know, in the last 9 days, a lot of stuff came through. Probably close to 350 pounds of tomatoes. Way more than we can process and take care of right now. We're so busy. It is completely ridiculous. We're not having any issues getting rid of the tomatoes that we want to get rid of. People are paying. They're very happy to pay what we're asking, and it's really amazing. People's trying to give us more money again this year than we're asking. We're just trying to make enough money to be able to put, pay for my bad habits of growing tomatoes. So we're still having a little bit of issues with worms. You can see the few buckets behind me and what's in the video. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but basically this whole side of the greenhouse was cherry tomatoes and some different varieties I was trying. None of them did well at all. The cherry tomatoes did okay as far as what they were putting on, but they would grow so fast. It was unattainable to be able to keep them in here with the amount of work we had going on, and we couldn't eat everything that they were making. Honestly, this year I'm happy to eat the bigger tomatoes than the smaller tomatoes. So we just went ahead and cut them out. We're kind of starting to get prepared for the fall, see how that works out, and we're gonna get going. So today we're gonna talk about the basic system I use. Before we get into that, we're gonna talk about the different types of systems. There's 3 or 4, basic types of systems. Everybody has their own version, the modifications or whatever they use for it. But I'm not going to get real detailed into them. But we have the Dutch bucket system, which is a form of what I use. Then there's different types of Dutch bucket systems that people use. They're all basically the same. Like I said, they have their own quirks that they use. Whatever works for you works for you. Don't be sitting there telling other people that, hey, that's not gonna work, or I can't believe you do it that way. If it works, it works. The proof's in the pudding with what I do. I got 500 square feet of greenhouse, and we're producing about 700 pounds a season, or at least in the spring season, of tomatoes out of the 500 square foot. So it's working for me. NFT, nutrient film technology, is another type of hydroponic system that you can use. It's usually mostly used with leafy vegetables, lettuces and greens, and tops and stuff like that you'd want to use. You can use it with something as simple as a downspout. Drill a few holes in it. You have constant water pumping all the time, a little film across the bottom. It does great. I've used it before. It just doesn't justify the amount of space it takes up for the amount of time we're able to use it over here in Louisiana, especially South Louisiana. I might get 2 or 3 good growing months out of it because of the heat. So, there's that, the nutrient film technology. Cracky, there's a lot of people on YouTube that shows how they do cracky. That is the simplest and easiest way to do it. I've tried it down here. I'm not a fan of it. The set and let, basically, you set it and you let it grow, it's not for me. I don't find it interesting enough. I forget about the stuff that needs to go in it. Just completely forget about the plants, over the time. Also with the temperatures we have over here, just like the nutrient film technology, once the temperatures get up to a certain point, the root systems and stuff don't work well, or you start having other types of issues with it. So the crack is not for me. There's other ones, that's out there. Another thing that kind of gets mixed up with hydroponics is aquaponics. It has nothing to do with hydroponics. It's the use of fish and fish waste to grow vegetables. It's something that we'd like to try. Again, I'm not 100% sure how it's going to work down here with the heat, but it is something we want to give a shot at some point. So, that's 3 or 4 of the small systems, basic, overview on the different types of systems they have that you can use to grow different types of food. Short about what I do is I grow Dutch buckets. My Dutch bucket system is as automated as possible to have as little hands-on as possible with it, using as far as filling up the fertilizer systems. You'll hear me talking about the tank barn. We're going to walk into the tank barn and show you what exactly we have in the tank barn. We're going to walk in the greenhouse and we're going to show you kind of what exactly we have. I'm not going to go into details about how I do the buckets. There's videos all over the internet on how to do the bucket. You get your grommet, your PVC, and you drill it about 2 inches up off the bottom. Plain and simple. Drilling the buckets is it's not rocket science. None of this is rocket science. If a Cajun can do it, you can do it. I'm telling you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I guess we'll start off at the tank barn. Describe what I have, what I do, why I do it like I do it, and we'll just work our way back from the tank barn into the greenhouse. So we're in front of the tank barn. I just call it the tank barn because I needed a name for it. When you're working with someone else, it's easy to have specific names for what you do, to where it makes it easier. The vocabulary for what you're using makes it easier when you're communicating with the people that help or work for you, to be able to know exactly what you're talking about. So, this is the tank barn, the caban, whatever floats your boat, that's what you use. You don't even have to have that, but with my work schedule, this works for me. So we'll take a look at it. You can see we have the tank barn, and I have covers that go over the holes. I have them off right now because I will be filling them up. The reason I have these holes is each tank has a circulating pump inside. On the bottom, all 3 tanks are tied together and they're all valved off. We put them at we open 1 tank at a time, and we circulate that tank twice a day for 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, just to keep the fertilizer in solution. I found that when you're leaving the tanks unmoving, not having anything circulating in them, the fertilizer does tend to fall out, or at least the salts and stuff from the fertilizer tends to fall out. So we have some little cheap sump pumps that circulate 3,500 gallons an hour. We put that in there. They just sit on the bottom. They push the water or the solution up, and it circulates it twice a day, half an hour a day. Keeps all the sediment off the bottom, puts everything into the greenhouses. Helps actually keep the sediment out of the tanks in the greenhouses. Shedwars. Let's go. So these are the mixing tanks. We mix the fertilizer solution in these tanks. This was some old pond liner that I had that we were using to set stuff on, and it works great. It's a little tough to move out the way, but it helps keep all the sun, or as much of the sun as possible. It helps keep it off, and it really helps control the algae. We don't have any issues with algae on this side. We're gonna go to the other side. You can see, gosh, man, I ain't had time to cut the grass. I need to get some gravels. I got a whole bunch of stuff to do. It seems like the more I work, the more I gotta work. On this side, you'll see that we don't have any tanks, any holes cut out the top. That is because this is just for holding fresh potable water. It holds the water for transfer to the other side. We only mix 2 to 3 totes of solution at a time. We've learned that, mixing any more than that doesn't really work. It starts to break down, fall out, and we just seem to have issues. So those at this point right now, those 3 totes will last us about 9 days. A couple weeks back, before we did a really hard pruning on everything, each tote was lasting a day and a half to 2 days. So we were going through a lot of fertilizer solution. That's something you want to think about. And again, Each of these tanks over here, they're piped into floats. You know, they're tied in, they run underground, and they tie into each one of the greenhouses. The sump tanks in the ground for the greenhouse, or the circulating tank in the ground for the greenhouse, whatever, you know, your version, what you want to call it, whatever it is, they're tied into there. There's an automatic cattle float on it. When the pumps kick on, it starts adding as soon as the float sees that it needs it. But we kind of run out of space right here because we are limited on space. We actually picked up 3 more totes, and we're looking to add some more totes, freshwater totes, to the system. So right here, we're gonna go left and right inside the chicken coop, and we're gonna add 3 more totes, probably about 6 feet off of the ground, and it's gonna work double. You know, it's gonna be another place for the chickens to be able to lay their eggs. We're gonna put some egg crates and stuff in there for the chickens to set and lay their eggs in. Adding 19 more chickens to the flock is really gonna, you know, they're not gonna have enough room in their actual place to be able to do it. So now we're gonna follow into the greenhouse. We're gonna start off at the sump, or the circulating tank, whatever you want to call it. One thing I forgot to say about the tanks, a lot of people will use top-off tanks where they add fresh water to their system into the freaking grass, man. I should have cleaned up a little bit better before I started showing y'all this. But a lot of people will show, well, a lot of people don't show. A lot of people use their top-off tanks. They just use fresh water. And the reason I don't do that is because we want to make this as simple and hands-free as possible. When you're using the fresh water, it's a lot more hands-on when you're adding fresh water to your tank, because you have to adjust the pH and the fertilizer daily, you know, so that's not something we want to do. What we actually do is we fix it at around 800 ppm. I say around 800 ppm because it's not rocket science. I'm not looking to get exactly at it. I actually go just above 800 ppm, and I mean, it's working for us. Look, that's after picking right at 950 pounds of tomatoes since the season started already. It works for us. We're gonna get to the all right, so you can see I got a little bit of mess. Every time I open this up, I get a little bit of stuff in there. I'll have to clean that out shortly. But it's hard to see in the bottom, but I have a 2,500 gallon per hour circulating pond pump from Harbor Freight. There's a valve off to the side. I use that valve right there to be able to reduce the pressure to the system. If I wouldn't have that, and then the valve stays wide open for all the buckets I have. If I wouldn't have that, it would the fertilizer solution would literally blow out the buckets, or it would blow the perlite out of the buckets. So I have that relief on it. I'd rather be overcharged on my pump and have a relief valve. And the reason I like having the relief on it, the valve on the side, is because it also takes and it's pushing back to the bottom. There's enough pressure on it to where it's constantly circulating everything off the bottom and helping keep it pushed back into the tank. So if there's any type of if there's any type of fertilizer that falls out of solution, that will help it go back into solution. It helps push it, at least push it closer to the tanks. Plain and simple, that pump pumps out. Let's see. That pump pumps out, pumps out in an 1.5 inch piece of pipe, pushes everything out, and then I swedge it down to 3/4 inch. Come down just about to the middle of the row, tie up, and then I drill holes and use top hat grommets to be able to run my my fill lines. From the fill lines, the buckets fill up, you know, to a certain point, then they start draining over back into the 4-inch lines, which bring it back into the tank. Part of what I do is I try to figure out as close as I can. One 1.5 gallons of fertilizer solution in the tank per bucket that I have. And the reason I do that is I try to keep the minimum amount of fertilizer in the tank. That way I'm constantly pushing fresh fertilizer out to each of the buckets. I kind of use almost a modified drain to waste system, I would say, because though I'm not draining it to waste, I'm constantly putting fresh fertilizer back into the plants. Every time it pumps down, I stay about 3 inches on top of the tank, on top of the pump, to where it doesn't suck air. By doing that, yay, the helicopters are flying. People are going to work in the Gulf of Mexico. By doing that, there's always fresh fertilizer in the tank. Always adding. You know, I was told it wouldn't work. It's not the right thing to do. But again, you can look at the production we're getting out of here, the tomatoes and everything, and you'll see it's really working. I use the 4-inch PVC pipe. A lot of people use the 2-inch PVC pipe to drain. The reason I went with the 4-inch was I found I had issues at other places. You know, at the property, I had issues with the 2-inch being able to drain fast enough to keep up with the overflow from the buckets. The 4-inch sewage drain PVC pipe that I'm using was actually cheaper than the 2-inch PVC pipe. The only difference in it was the fittings. The fittings were about 20% more than the fittings for the 2-inch. I was okay with that. The buckets sit on a run, 2x6 right here. I made it just wide enough for the piece of PVC to fit in, and it's actually this backboard right here, so outside to outside of the runs is 7 7/8 inches wide. I made it standard. They're all the same. The 5-gallon buckets and the 4-gallon buckets sit on it. That way I can interchange them. I don't have to worry about fixing them or changing anything if I end up having to go with different types of buckets. So that's part of what's going on. And I mean, that's really the gist of everything. It's a super simple system. Top off with fertilizer. The reason I top off with fertilizer, read a long time ago, a couple years ago, I read that tomatoes are the type of plant that really like to they like the same amount of fertilizer. They don't like a real high portion at the top, and then, you know, every time the pump kicks on, you send in less fertilizer. I read that, you know, I put it to use with an experiment, and again, you could see in the pictures and the videos how it works. So we're constantly adding. We never go up on the fertilizer mix. It stays the same all the time. Like I said, it's just over 800 ppm. And the reason I say it's just over 800 ppm, we don't have an exact estimate of how much water we're putting in the totes. Totes have a line on the side that say 250 gallons. We add another couple inches to it. So we're figuring we're somewhere around 270, 275 gallons. It's easy just to mix it at 280 gallons. And we start to finish, that's what we end up with, really, start to finish. And the tomatoes are looking good, really good. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I got a gas can. You might have seen that. I got a gas can in the greenhouse. Got to clean up. Been cleaning up, been adding. So I don't know, a whole bunch more to talk about. These are Jetstar tomatoes, and I mean, they did well. I'm not very happy with them. They put out a lot of foliage, and that made issues with the worms. No matter how much BT we sprayed, we could not get enough on them to keep the worms off of them. And you can see there's 3 of them right here. Even after the big pruning, another worm, aggravating. So these will be coming out very, very shortly. and hopefully we put some more. They taste good. We're gonna grow them in the ground next year at the property. Hopefully that property we could be bringing back growing grass, boy. Yeah, growing grass hobby farms are gonna be back. Whoa, look, the water just kicked on, scared the heck out of me. But I actually need to lower the float in here a little bit more, but I don't want to mess with it at this point because I don't want to get any type of glue into the water, the fertilizer system. We're gonna have to lower it whenever it comes back on. But you can see how much it pulls the water down. It just kicked on and we're already down about 2 inches in there. If the water was a little bit lower, you'd be able to see the recirculating pipe or the pressure relief pipe circulating off the ground. Really helps keep that tank clean for the most part, except for the stuff that floats and sticks to the walls. I know y'all are tired of hearing me talk. We're gonna have another episode coming up, soon, hopefully. I was planning on doing 2 to 3 a month, and it's been a little bit over a month since I've done the last one. I hope y'all get something out of this. If y'all have more questions, please ask. In the next videos, I can always go into a little bit more detail. I'm not a teacher. I'm hardly a student, but I'm trying to learn, trying to get it right, experimenting and seeing what's going on and what's pushing it in the right place. I've never made a 25-minute video, and this ain't gonna be it. It's right at 20 minutes already, and I'm probably gonna do some editing out of it to stop it. But yeah, that's the gist of what we got going on. We hope to have the screen put up. One thing about hydroponics is the more you can control with the atmosphere or your environment, the better your stuff's gonna do. So we're hoping to get the screen up to keep the moths out. By keeping the moths and the butterflies out, that keeps the worms out. Also gonna help keep out the stink bugs. The more we can control, the better off you're gonna be. So South Louisiana, boy, you gotta love it. It's hot. It's hot. Y'all grow that later.